So, hi friends. I'm here back with my very last 10K vlog, if you want to call it that. Just wanted to recap how the race went. It was a week ago Sunday, and tell you how the whole process went and just some of my thoughts and reflections that I've had in the past week. So, the day before the race, I did my pack up pickup right at the park where the race was going to be. Now, if you remember, I shared on Instagram that I did 2 loops around the lake the Sunday before. I was actually only supposed to do 5.5 miles. I ended up doing 6 just because I was tired and wanted to get it over with and go home. And set a time of 1 hour and 50 minutes on the dot for 2 loops, which is 10K. It was exactly 10K. So when I went to pack up pickup, I was a little bit nervous about it taking me that long. So I asked one of the volunteers what would happen if it took me that long on the day of the race. Like, would they come around with a cart and say, "You're taking too long, we're just gonna like DNF you"? And she said, no, it doesn't matter how long it takes. They may send a cart around just to make sure you're okay, but you finish when you finish, so don't worry about it. So that made me feel better. The next morning, I got up, had a banana and I think a soy nut butter and jelly sandwich before I went. I didn't really want a lot on my stomach, but I wanted something on my stomach to give me some fuel for the day. I didn't drink a lot because I didn't want to have to go to the bathroom during the race because there was only one place with porta potties, and that was at the beginning of the race. So I really didn't want to have to hold it for an extended period of time. So I got there. I was very anxious. If you know me, these type of events, any kind of race or competition, it doesn't really matter how much I prepare for them. I'm always anxious the morning of, and it's more of a nervousness of just being there and knowing that I have to quote unquote perform. It's not really any doubt in my ability to do the thing. It's just a general anxiousness. And part of that is just being in large crowds too. I don't really like large crowds at all. So especially when you go to races like 5K or 10K, there are just so many people and they're all around you, and it can be anxiety producing. So thankfully I had a friend who was there at a booth who was volunteering, and she gave me a nice big hug. And so that helped calm me down. I also was starting to get messages from my friends telling me, wishing me the best on the race. So the race started at 9, and I went out. Again, we were mixed in with the 5K folks, and some folks were walking the 5K, some people were running the 5K. There were also 10K people, and it was really because the way they did the bibs, and actually, here's my bib. The way they did the bibs, you couldn't tell who was doing which race. So as I'm going along, I start off with the 5K people. I know that I want a pace that will keep me basically in zone 2 the whole time. So I didn't go out. I tried not to go out hard. I probably went a little bit faster in the first 1K than I probably should have, but not so hard that I was completely out of breath. I remembered the very first hill that we go up is probably the hardest hill of the entire race. Made it up that hill without stopping and just kept on going about the race. Really trying to just settle into a nice zone 2 pace for me where I was still conversational, even though I wasn't there talking to anybody. But every now and again, somebody had to suffer and hear me sing a few lines of a song. And if I could get them out and I felt like it was comprehensible, then I was still in a nice pace. I tried not to, actually, I don't think I tried not to look at my Whoop to see what my heart rate was. I just wanted to go by how my body felt. Because sometimes I find if I look at the heart rate in the Whoop, it actually doesn't make me feel better. Especially if it's higher than I think it is, but I feel okay. So I just put the music on, had a nice playlist. Every other song was a motivational speech, which came in really handy in some difficult spots. And just went along and finished the first loop. I was very proud of myself when I finished the first loop. I did see a lot of people at the end. So the first loop ends where you start. So if you're doing the 5K, you just turn in and go in under the tent, under the, I don't know what you call that thing. Or you just keep going and you start a second loop. So I started my second loop, and then I realized there were fewer people on the path, which was nice because while doing the first 5K, I'm like mixed in with 5K people. There's a lot of people on the path, and it just made things a little too crowded for my taste. So when I started my second loop, there were far few people there, and at a certain point, I was just running by myself. The only other people out on the path were just people who were out walking, just for fun for their normal Sunday morning walks. So at one point, here's a fun fact. At one point, my left foot started to fall asleep, and I tried not to panic. Again, I had the goal of running the whole race without stopping, but my foot started falling asleep, and I think I had done 2 kilometers, and I was like, well, I'm just going to keep running. It'll probably work itself out. 2 kilometers later, it felt like I was dragging my left foot. So I finally decided to stop, loosen my shoestrings, and then get back to running. I just only stopped long enough to retie my shoes, and then I got back on it. And within a few minutes, my foot started feeling normal again. And I remember that my friend Gab had told me that if that ever happens, it's probably because my shoe is tied too tight. So I decided to not count that as stopping because it was absolutely necessary for me to retie my shoe. There was no way I would have been able to finish that race without doing it. So I got through the second loop. My paces for each kilometer stayed about the same. They stayed within like 2 seconds of each other. So I was completing each kilometer in at about 10 minutes and 33 seconds. Now that's a little bit slower than I was doing in training, but also, again, I was fine with it because I knew that at that pace I could finish without stopping, and the goal again was just to finish without stopping. So I get to the end of the race. And I come to the end, I run in, and the volunteers are just cheering for me, waiting for me. I got my medal. And I just all of a sudden stopped. And they were like, you did it, we're so proud of you. And they're like, are you okay? And I think like my body all of a sudden just realized what it'd done. And I needed a hug. So I told one of the volunteers, I was like, somebody hug me, because everything is sort of feeling like it was shut down. And I think I needed the hug, one, to like calm my system down, but also as like an affirmation that I did it. Like it was almost like my brain and my body didn't believe that I did it. And the volunteer that I'd seen the day before gave me a huge hug, and she said to me, you beat your time from last week. And I was kind of like, what? And she's like, you beat your time. Remember, you told me you finished in an hour and 50 minutes. We haven't even reached an hour and 50 minutes. I looked at my phone, and the time was like 1:46:30 something. So I was very proud about that. And they gave me water, a banana, got me to a chair so I could sit down, because again, everything was sort of like body's in shock. They were already giving out the prizes for the 5Ks, and I was just really happy. I was, in fact, the very last person to finish the race. And it was okay. Like, the biggest thing was that I finished. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about, like how I went into training for this. Initially, I was training for this race kind of in the same mindset as a 5K. And like I mentioned in a previous episode, that my friend Gab had a talk with me and said, a 5K and a 10K are different. 5Ks you can run for speed. 10Ks are slow distance. They are zone 2. So the paces that you need to have for a 10K are going to be slower than your paces for your 5K. So once she told me that, then for me, my training was really about, one, accumulating the distance over the time. So it was being able to run for a longer period of time, longer period of distance, but also maintaining that zone 2 pace. Now for me, it was mostly closer to zone 3, like a little bit over zone 3, but like higher in the zone 2. And that was perfectly fine for me. I didn't go out and run outside as much as I wanted to, just because I was training a lot in the summer, and the summers were especially hot here in Maryland, and there were a lot of days where it was just like a code red day, I think they call it, where it was like, don't go outside unless you absolutely have to, because the heat is like dangerously hot. So a lot of my training was on the treadmill, inside, in controlled circumstances. So like we had the air conditioning on, all those sorts of things. And to tell you the truth, I am on the fence if that was a good idea or a bad idea. Obviously a good idea not to run in the heat where you can get sick. But on the treadmill, I think if I were to do it again, I probably would use the feature that changes the inclination to like simulate hills. Because I trained on a completely flat, no incline the entire time, except for the few times that I went outside. And I think that that didn't serve me well. And so I know better for the next time. I would probably try to go outside a little bit more often, even if that meant just having to go out super early as soon as the sun came out, so I would avoid the heat. But all in all, I'm still pretty happy with the training that I did. Like I said, I did the treadmill. I built up the time so that I would be accustomed to it when I went outside. So I intentionally went probably slower than I should have on the treadmill some days, but it helped because I was able to maintain a pace for almost 2 hours. An hour and 46 minutes is a long time. So someone asked me, why did you sign up for this? And the only answer I can come up with is I like to do challenging things. I like to do stuff that's new and different and learn from that. So back in, I want to say March, starting in January leading up to March, I follow a couple on YouTube. It's Team Richie, and Jasmine decided to do a marathon, and she trained for it in 3 months. And I just saw how much joy she got out of that, and decided that instead of running a 5K, which I've done this race before, I've done the 5K last year, I was going to push myself and try and do the 10K. So I like finding new things to do. In fact, I was telling somebody recently that I want to say in 2011 or 2012, I can't remember which one. In the beginning of the year, I'd signed up for 10 races. Now, signing up for 10 races, and this was all within the span of a week. I got a nice tax refund and just had money to burn, so I signed up for 10 different races. They were mostly all 5Ks. I think there were a couple, there was one 10K, There might have been a couple of Spartan races mixed in too. But I put those out there that gave me something to train for. And it's funny because we hear a lot in the fitness space about having being goal oriented or process oriented. And I think I'm a little bit of a mix in between. So I like to pick a thing to plan for, to train for. So I'll sign up for a 10K and then go through the process of training for it. A couple of years ago, I decided that I wanted to do an Olympic lifting meet. So I set the goal of doing an Olympic lifting meet and started training. I trained for an entire year for the Baltimore Open. Just last year, I decided I wanted to do a powerlifting meet and trained for 4 or 5 months to do that in January. And like I said, I like to set goals. My real probably love for that is the process that happens to make it to the goal. So in other words, I actually like the training part actually a little bit more than the actual competition part. So, because it helps me grow, helps me learn a lot about myself, and about the process of how do people who do this all the time improve and get better. So, for example, the Olympic lifting. So that took a lot of learning how to slow down and being more intentional and purposeful with my movement. So in CrossFit, everybody knows CrossFit. We love to move barbell. We like cycle through and do like things like Fran, where you do basically thrusters and pull-ups. You do it as fast as you can. Or say a workout like Grace, where you do 30 clean and jerks for time. And people, a good time is to get it under 2 minutes. When you're training for an Olympic lifting meet, all of that has to change. You have to slow down, be very purposeful about your movement patterns. And so that kind of learning is really what I enjoy. Now, when I get to the meets, I'm a nervous wreck because, again, being in crowds, being in front of people, sort of like a performance, has never been my thing. The process is really what I love, but using everything that I learned during the process has helped me do well in these things. So like for the example of the Olympic lifting meet, I spent a whole year preparing for that and training for that. And then I won my weight class and age group division. Same thing with the powerlifting meet. I didn't win anything, but I did really well amongst people who train nothing but powerlifting. Same thing with the Olympic lifting meet. I did really well amongst people who do this all the time. And I think that's the thing that I really love, is learning that process of how people who do this all the time do it and then being successful for it. So what's next? That was the one thing the folks at the race asked me. We're like, what are you going to do next? What's your goal? What's your next race? And I was like, I have no idea. Like, there's not a thing that, like, I thought about up to that point. However, just a couple of days ago, I signed up for the Turkey Trot 5K down at the mall, down the street from my house. I'm not also going to register for the Ladder Liftoff Challenge, which is an Olympic lifting competition at a CrossFit gym. So basically, there's a ladder of barbells that you and your teammate will go through and increasing weights. And if you make it to a certain point, you get on the spotlight platform and you lift under a spotlight where they turn all the lights out. There's a spotlight on you, you lift. I have participated in the first 2 years. I absolutely love it. It's like an Olympic lifting meet, but for me, it's less stressful because we're just there to have fun. We do it on a team. My friend and I do it on a team. We're there to have fun. Of course, we want to lift heavy, but we don't put a lot of pressure on ourselves to win. So those are the things that are up next for me. I would like to next year focus on gymnastics, specifically pull-ups and toes to bar, and things like wall walks and handstand push-ups. These are the things that sort of keep me from progressing in the RX field when it comes to the CrossFit Open, and I really want to do better at that. They've brought back quarterfinals, and that has been one of my goals, is to be able to qualify for quarterfinals in my age group. I would love to do that. Maybe not this year, but do the work so that I can qualify, because eventually when I get to the 60, the 64 age group, I would love to be able to qualify for the CrossFit Games. But I know I have to put in the work. So, and it's going to be a multi-year process. Like I said, the biggest thing that's holding me back now was these gymnastics moves. And so that's part of my goals as well. So I want to thank everybody who's followed me on this journey. I think this will be episode number 5. And it's been fun sort of keeping track of how things have been going with training for the 10K. I want to do this more for some other things, and then also just share some of my thoughts. Again, I love the sport of CrossFit. I love other sports too. One day maybe I'll do a High Rocks if I can manage to register before they sell out. But again, if I do that, that's another thing that I'll have to train for, because there are elements that I am not that I'm not familiar with them, but I'm not at the level to do them and do well at High Rocks. One of the things, every other station is a 1,000-meter run. So then that means I have to get my 1,000-meter runs down to a competitive pace. And when I say competitive, not like elite level, just so that I'm not out there trying to do this whole thing in like 3 or 4 hours. Like, a lot of people are able to get High Rocks done in like an hour and a half. So we have to just train for that. So that's all I have. Those are all the highlights for the 10K race. That's what's going on. Some of my upcoming goals. And again, I'm going to share those. I'm going to try and share those here. And the goal is to also share these podcasts on some podcast apps as well. So I will talk to you soon. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment, have questions. If there's something you think I should give a try, put it in the comments below and I will think about it. I'm not going to say I'm going to do it, but I will certainly think about it. Again, I want to give a shout out to Team Richie, especially Jasmine, who really inspired me to do this race. I've been following them, I don't know, since maybe 2016. Ever since they started their channel, through their journeys through CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting. Now they have their own fitness app and just really doing well. They have a clothing line, which I realize I have a lot of their apparel. It's really good apparel. So thanks again to you guys for inspiring me, and I'll see you in the next one.